everyone, and welcome back for some more fun while I test out the local supplies that we've got. So, of course, to start off with, we are working with the Munguyo half pan set that I also got from my local PNA, not sponsored. I really like this set. It's got 24 colors. It's got the cold and warm primary colors and a few others that makes it a very versatile palette and good enough for beginners and for people that take their art a little bit seriously. So, yeah, you will see for the project that I've got here, I've basically used the primary colors and all of the greens that they've got because I am wanting to do some botanicals. I have chosen the transparent colors specifically and I swatched them all out so you can see that there's the reds, the yellows, the blues, and the greens. There's only one of the blues that's semi-transparent and I have glazed them over each other, and this gives me a very nice chart to look up colors and get an idea of what it will look like when I paint the one color on top of the other. So, glazing is traditionally from oil painting, where you paint a transparent layer over another transparent layer and you get a luminous kind of effect. But in botanicals, it is much better if you want to get more detail and be more precise. And I can literally look up my color of my leaves and my plants from the reference to get an idea how the colors are going to behave when I put the paint on top of each other. So I found that if I mix the olive with, I think it's the cerulean blue, or no, it's the cobalt blue, I get this lovely green color, which matches the leaves of my pansy the best. And you'll see that I've done it where the one color goes first, then the other. And there's a slight variation depending on if you painted the blue first, which is that row. And then if you painted the olive green first, which is slightly more to the top, you will get a slight different change depending on which layer you painted first. For example, that one, if you painted the green first and the blue over, you get a slightly darker effect if you do it that way around. So this is very handy. I really recommend if you guys want to do glazing that you make a chart like this because it's going to give you a very good predictive idea of what to expect. So I made another chart basically using exactly the same technique using mixed media paper. And as you can see, I was not so successful. Unfortunately, the second layer came on quite streaky. It interfered or lifted the paint underneath slightly. It didn't dry evenly. And this is where paper apparently makes a huge difference. So, as you can see, also paint sits on top, and just a little bit of a splash of water completely disturbed the paint. So, that is something to take note of if you're using mixed media paper or something like that, which, um, you know, has a habit of lifting the paint. So even there, where some of my favorite mixes, which is the reds and the greens on top of each other, you can really see how the paint has gone muddy if you compare it to how it looks over here, which gives you that nice luminous translucent effect which you want to get in glazing. So exactly the same technique, same brushes, same everything. Only difference is this is 100% cotton hot pressed and the other paper is a mixed media, which does say it is good for painting. It doesn't warp or buckle or anything, but it has a very, very different effect when you're working with paints. So if you do have mixed media and things like that, is something to take into note that if you're trying to do glazing like I am, that is definitely going to have a huge effect. So back to my little flower that I picked, this little pansy that I've got growing in the herb garden. Um, I am trying to take references from my garden and environment and really learn how to do nature studies with watercolors. And want to make a watercolor nature study journal, and I am planning on actually binding my own notebook, which I'll also make another video on, and we will see how that goes. Here you can see the original paper from the mixed media that I swatched out my entire palette. A lot of art notebooks are mixed media. So this specific mixed media paper is 12 sheets of Fabriano, 250 grams. The hot press watercolor paper, 100% cotton, is also from PNA. I'm not sure if it's Chinese or Japanese. It probably is Chinese. It is 190 by 260 millimeters, acid free, 300 grams, and 10 sheets. And yeah, this was the first time I actually went looking for hot pressed paper. This is all that they had. And yeah, so I don't know anything about this brand or anything, but it looks decent. They had a couple of different options there. So let's go take a look. This is an example. You can see the watercolor hot pressed paper is quite smaller than A4. It's not quite A4, so that is something to take into consideration if that is something that is important to you. Also, the thickness, it feels slightly softer. It's a little bit more yellow. So the texture looks exactly the same as the multimedia paper. That's over here. That's why I wanted to really see how much of a difference it really makes, because the one is a little bit more expensive than the other one, even though both say they are appropriate for watercolors. Obviously, this is also supposed to be for other media, ink and acrylic and graphite and all of that stuff. So, you know, if you take a look at the texture, you can't really see a difference. The multimedia paper is much whiter than the cotton. The cotton has got a slight yellow tinge to it. As you can see, if you put them next to each other, it's slightly more yellow than the white. So, you know, you might think, what would be the big deal? And this is where actually testing out your materials can show that sometimes it's not you, it is things like your brush, your paper, your paints, and things like that that is making quite a big difference. The watercolor paper, the cotton feels a bit softer, and the normal paper or the media paper feels a little bit more stiffer. It is slightly thicker to the eye. And if you do compare the weight of the cotton to the mixed media, you do feel a little bit of a difference. So definitely a little bit heavier than the multimedia paper. As I mentioned before, I took a plant or a cutting from my garden. This is little pansy that I got in my herb garden that I'm going to be using. I used the actual photo or a photo of it for sketching it out, but I used the actual plant for color reference, and I also just sketched it out with my mechanical pencil. The first time I sketched it out was on the multimedia paper. I did it on the same page where I did my full swatch of my color palette. So just to give you an idea, pretty much two size. And you can see, even though the yellow came out all right, the green came out all right, I ran into some problems with the purple, because when I was glazing and I was trying to layer the blue and the pink on top of each other to give you that nice translucent effect which you get in the plant itself, it just turned into one color and it was all mucky. You can also see this specifically, you know, when I try to put the fine little veins and everything in to give it variation, They just all turned into one color, like I mixed everything up front. And also on the yellow parts of the flower where I tried to put the shadow in, or where I tried to layer in a little bit of the reds on top and things like that. It just lifted the pigments up underneath, and it wasn't giving the effect that I was hoping to give it. So I tried to put a little bit of yellow over on top to give it a little bit more luminosity, and it just lifted everything on top. It turned it into like a mucky brown, which was really not the effect that I was hoping to get. And this was really my first attempt at glazing in general. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm just doing it wrong. Like, what is happening? Like, why am I struggling? Why is the paint lifting so much? Especially here with the leaves, I did 2 layers, and when I try to give it a little bit more of a tint of a variation of color, it just all turned into the same color. You didn't really get the nice variation in tone that I was hoping for, and instead of shadows, it just turned to muck, which is really, really disappointing and frustrating. So I gave up on this painting, and I thought, I'm not going to continue anymore. This is not going where I want it to be. I must be doing something wrong, or maybe I've got the wrong paper. And that is when I decided that I'm actually going to try to recreate the same painting on the hot press paper and see how much of a difference the paint's going to make. So over here you can see when I got my single coat of paint, it looked very nice. But it really sits on top of the surface of the paper. So if you're going to be doing some sketching with ink and you just want to give it a little single wash of color, maybe do a wet and wet blending effects and stuff like that, this paper is fine. But if you are trying to get the glazing effect, this paper really is just very frustrating and not really worth using it for that. But yeah, the single layer paint looks very nice on the paper itself. Very bright, intense colors, but it does get disturbed very, very quickly. It's just not what is what I necessarily wanted to achieve. So let's now compare it to a painting of exactly the same thing. You can see an immediate difference, immediate difference of intensity of values and color depth and luminosity. I did go a little bit more intense on the purple with the variation because I really wanted to test out the glazing effect. And I don't know if you can see it here nicely, if the camera can focus. I actually managed to, I did the first layer in blue, then I did a second layer in red, then I did another layer in blue, and then I did another layer in red. So for the purple part of the petals, I actually did 4 layers, and you get very nice layering with no issues. For the yellow of the flower, I went in a little bit too quick. I hadn't waited for the yellow to dry out completely. So in the top you can see I got fine lines for the veins, but on the yellow I didn't wait for the paint to dry completely enough, so it is a little bit more blurry. But that's my mistake. That's got nothing to do with the paper. I was a little bit impatient and I didn't wait for the paint to dry completely before I went in. With the leaves, I started off with the olive green. Then I went in with a blue layer. Then I went in with a red layer. And then I went in with a yellow layer. And then I went in with another green layer on top. So that is a lot of layers that I got into the paper. And I probably could have added more layers. I didn't have any real issues with lifting, but the pigment was starting to build up a little bit thick. And I do think I maybe overdid a little bit, but as far as the glazing effect goes, you get a nice variation in depth of colors. The colors are nice and crisp. It's a completely different experience. And for this being my second attempt at glazing ever, I don't think it came out too badly. So I don't know what you guys think of that. Please let me know in the comments. So just as a final comparison, my first painting that I did on mixed media is on the left, and then the cotton hot pressed is on the right. There's a slight size variation, but other than that, you can see the colors, the lines, the depth, the hues, everything is just much more intense and sharp than the first one. It was actually fun to paint the second one, whereas I did not really enjoy the first one when I started glazing, and I was getting results that I had not expected. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'd be surprised if anybody thought the first painting was better. And have you guys tried glazing yet? What papers are you guys using? And what is on your art projects that you guys have got going? So that is it for today. I will be checking out some more art supplies that's easily locally available. We'll probably be doing a paintbrush review, maybe a couple of more experiments of painting things that I have in my garden. We will probably do the bookbinding project together. I'll film that. Yeah, and please do follow me for some more tips and tricks and tribulations as I figure this out with you guys. And thank you very much. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.